It is 5:01. We'll call the meeting to order. The special council meeting at City Hall, Tuesday, November 8th, 2022. Amy, roll call, please. Fire.
Paschal.
Here.
Tompkins. Marshall. Wagner.
Here.
Witzel.
Here.
Fisher.
Here.
Spiros.
Here.
O'Reilly.
Here.
Kendler.
Here.
Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Citizens' comments. We have two people that signed up this evening. Our first citizen is Bill Panker.
Good evening, Bill Penker, 600 Sycamore Avenue. I'm the Vice President of the Police and Fire Commission, and I will be reading a statement that the commissioners have prepared. The Police and Fire Commission recognizes the financial situations facing the Common Council. We are especially aware of the consequences of a decision against the City of Marshfield in the property tax legal fight with the Marshfield Clinic Health Systems. Given the effects of inflation and unstable fuel costs, we recognize the need for tight budgets. The police department and fire department budgets presented to the commission were considered tight by the command staffs. We concur with that assessment, and further cuts present a problem. It is the commission's assessment that further cuts will negatively affect the ability of both departments to respond to the protective service needs of residents, visitors, and the commercial, industrial, and institutional sectors of the city. We recognize that funding is allocated to the departments by the Common Council and is done in a manner that the council believes is in the best interests of the taxpayers. However, a reduction in protective service allocations does not enhance our ability to provide the highest levels of service to the community. Reference the 4% budget cut. The commission finds it is unable to consider the 4% budget cuts, knowing they will adversely affect the health and safety of all of us in Marshfield. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Panker. Our second speaker, Commissioner Steven Steinbeck.
Good evening. I'm Commissioner Steven Steingruber. However, my comments here are my own. If you've seen our meetings, you know how many times I've spoken on my personal faith and my view of government in Romans 13. I'm not going to do that tonight. What I do wish to do, if you'll allow me, is pray for you because you need all the wisdom that you can get. And so I pray. Lord God of heaven and earth, please give this Common Council of Marshfield, Wisconsin, your divine wisdom as they search for ways to overcome these budgetary challenges. We know that you hold all governments in your hand, and we ask that you bless them. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Steve. With all the talent in this room, I'm confident we can come to a positive, productive budget outcome. Item number D, continue review and consideration of the recommended 2023 budget. Tom Witzel, Chairman of the Finance, Budget, and Personnel, presiding.
I'm sorry.
Good evening. This time we will be hearing a presentation from staff regarding the requested information 4% across the board budget cut. I would ask that the council take note of those items that are addressed. And I would ask that you hold questions and comments for after the entire presentation is given. Mr. Barg will be presenting much of it, but then various department heads will also be presenting various information, including some potential side effects of proposed cuts. At that point, then, once we have had the complete presentation from staff, we will move on to letter F, and we will do like we did last time. We will go around and have every council member be given an opportunity to speak. We'll start over here on this side this time, so Mike will be up first, and we will go through, and if anybody has any further questions or comments about the budget or about those things that are presented this evening, you will have that opportunity at that. So with that said, I will turn it over now to Steve to present what he has put together.
Thank you. Before we actually get into the presentation, I'd like to call Jennifer Selensky, our finance director, to the podium. She's got some good news that was brought to our attention today that she can describe what it means to us and the information involved. Jennifer?
Good evening. The good news I have for us today is we have received from the Department of Revenue our approved chargeback request of rescinded or refunded property taxes. So you'll recall earlier this year, we had an entity be granted a tax exemption, and that was worth $56,000 that we did refund to that entity earlier this year. We submitted that to the DOR, and they have approved that the other taxing districts will refund the city of Marshfield, as we've already repaid the taxpayer. So we'll be receiving amounts from Wood County, the school district, and Mid-State Technical College. And then the portion that was allocated to the city, which is $24,398, can be added to the base for our levy. If you'll recall, earlier in the discussion, we had recouped the $90,000 from last year that we didn't include in the base last year. So we already had that amount built in. So this would be the addition of another $24,398 of property tax benefit in the general fund, which would increase our tax rate from $10.60 per thousand to $10.62. So an impact of 2 cents per thousand of assessed value, enabling us to get an additional $24,000 of tax revenue. Any questions?
I can just ask a follow-up. Yeah, and maybe describe what that means to the levy, because we look at future years levy based upon how much we levy this year.
Correct. So this will be an increase in our base levy. So this will carry forward from year to year. Is that what you're intending me to explain? Yeah. Right. So it came off the roll in total for this one entity, and we're allowed to add back just that, our share, for this upcoming year and future years.
Thank you. Roll on? Yep. Okay, if there's no questions on that, I'll roll on here. Thank you, Jennifer. I just want to make a few comments before we start. I usually don't read my comments, but I want to make sure I got them right tonight, so it's fairly short. But at the end of the last budget meeting, council directed staff to develop a list of possible cuts totaling $960,000, 4% of our $24 million general fund expenses. Staff has worked diligently to comb through our 51 individual cost center budgets in the general fund. We prepared a list that we presented to you this evening. In a moment, we're going to walk through these cuts. We're going to have each individual department or division head responsible for those cost center budgets present them. As was mentioned earlier by the Finance, Budget, and Personnel Chair, Tom Witzel, wait till the end as far as questions and comments. But you'll get to hear from the particular people who can explain any consequences or impact of these cuts. I do want to say that some of the cuts can perhaps be made with limited impact. However, other staff believes will have a definite impact on our operation or consequences to the services our city citizens receive. In some cases, that could be quite significant, and we may be actively recommending against some of these cuts. But we understand that the council has a desire to look at these financial concerns, and we recognize these are very difficult decisions that need to be made by the council. So with that in mind, let's start the process going through these items. I'm going to invite the city clerk, Jessica Schifferl, to the podium. She'll touch on the council, clerk, and elections budget first. Does everybody have these sheets up on their screen somehow, somewhere? Were they sent? No, they weren't sent. I was supposed to send them maybe? Oh, been one of those days. Can you, yeah, or can they be sent directly by you, Jordan? I'm sorry, I thought this was done. I apologize. I don't know, it depends if people need paper as opposed to getting the email.
There's also 2 people that are remote.
Yeah.
Are there any council members that wish to have a paper copy? The mayor would like 2 copies. 3, 4, 5, 6. Make a bunch.
Okay. You want to pause?
We'll take a pause for a second. We're gonna,
Of what? Do you want mine? Copy from this and I'll use yours to present.
I sincerely apologize for this. My fault. A lot of stuff going on today. It's been kind of a crazy day and a lot of fronts. And I was thinking that this had gotten out to you, but we'll just give Amy a minute to print off copies. Others of you are now getting it by email, I believe, which hopefully will be something that you can access and walk through these, because we're going to painstakingly go through. I will say this, we're not going to go through every item. Some of these items are like $500 or $1,000. I've talked to the department heads. You know, you don't need to sit and spend a lot of time talking about $500 cut to your operating supply budget. That's probably not where the real debate or discussion is going to be. It's more on the items that are of greater significance and dollar-wise and in terms of impact to the operation or to the citizens of Marshfield potentially as well.
Want me to go ahead with mine? Just read each line. I don't have many lines.
let's just wait until we get a copy, at least via email.
That's what I thought you said. A doctor, are you going to, what do you?
Did those that are remote receive the email?
I'm checking right now.
I'll check too. I did receive an email just now.
Are those here in person getting the email? Okay.
Yeah, I have it.
Okay. We'll wait for just another moment here while copies are handed out, paper. I know Mike did.
Thanks, Amy.
I also received it.
Okay.
All right, everybody ready for Jessica to highlight what should be on the top of your form with council, clerk, and elections? Jessica, take it away.
Okay, so for the council budget, we start off with legal fees being reduced by a proposed $2,000. That's dropping it to an average of $1,000 per month just for the council allocation for legal fees. That does not include legal fees that are allocated from other departments. We would also be looking at reducing the travel budget for the council by about $3,000. That would lead to only new members going to league every year, or we'd be looking at a half and half split. We'd have to determine how that was best approached. That's what I found in the council budget. Elections, we're looking at a $2,500 reduction in supplies. So in an odd election year, that is our slow election cycle. So usually we do drop the expenses, which we did drop those expenses. Reducing them a little lower just means some of those extra supplies that we try to get in the off year wouldn't be purchased. So we're looking at things like replacement polling booths that we could use today, as I see people waiting in line for a polling booth, but we could delay it if we needed to do that. The clerk budget itself was a lot harder to cut from. You will see that I have $40 recommended reduction from some recording fees. Any other reductions I'm looking at are going to have to come from staff hours and staff positions. We have a contract with an employee on some educational reimbursement. That is already a signed contract, so we would have a difficult time going back on that if we were directed to do so. The other lines I've looked at would be travel for myself and for staff. That would include, if we would reduce that travel budget, we would have to reevaluate our job descriptions, because our job descriptions do mandate that we get our certification. So the travel budget that's included there is for our mandatory certification to perform. And beyond that, with us both being new, it's just a critical component for us. So we looked at it, but we are not recommending any cut there. So
Thanks,
that's
Jessica.
what I have.
Okay, thanks a lot. Appreciate it. I'll go on to the next part, even though it involves the council. This is the part where the non-government organizations, as we often call them, NGOs, you had a presentation last week by Civic Band, School Patrol, those kind of things. And, it's impossible for us to put out $960,000 worth of cuts without, using these as reductions as well. So I've taken out the one for Job Center. We actually have an agreement, a lease with the Job Center for space in the Second Street Community Center through the end of March of 2024. So we're certainly not going to be cutting ourselves off on that one. We have committed to providing assistance for that service. But I am proposing that we look at cutting out the $3,300 to Macy, $6,000 to Marshfield School District, $4,800 to Marshfield Civic Band, and $7,500 to the North Central Wisconsin for the Upper Mansion, the Historical Society. And again, I want to remind you with all these cuts, we're just putting these out there at the request of coming up with a 960. Moving on from there, historic preservation, I removed $160, which is basically 4% of their budget. And this would affect possible advertising and media engagement that they wanted to do. The previously noted non-government organizations would affect the community services provided to citizens of this area. Going down to administration, we're proposing the possible delaying of a replacement of what is Amy's position, although, as you know, we're looking to have that become an HR generalist position. For the first 2 months of 2023, we would delay that. Obviously, that would hinder our efforts to be an efficient, effective human resources function. We would also be looking at dropping off $1,500 for the HR director's training and education. Again, there's an impact there. Professional services, the fee for position revaluations, cutting that by $1,000, and then the per diem for the mayor, she has volunteered, cutting that by $800. You'll notice that that's also listed at the bottom of this first page, or near the bottom of the first page. That's a duplication. Those are the same item. IT, I'll start, and Matt maybe can address anything if need be, but there's 4 items under technology. The first one is to reduce the hours under temporary services. And again, technology has people who are, part-time people who do things like scanning and other type of positions. So that would take away from that. Under the next item would be $16,000 to reduce consulting hours. That's when we get a consultant in to do work with us in terms of maintenance and upgrade of the system. The thought there that maybe we could either delay it or perhaps try and do more of that maintenance and servicing with our in-house staff. Next item would be $20,000 reduction to the EBS fund. That's their enterprise business system. Those of you who've been around for a while know that we've been converting to the software. We're still working through that. We still got some funds left over, and perhaps a need for lesser of those funds to complete the software conversion. And then finally, roughly $10,000 related to some equipment for the police department and getting better performance for PCs for engineering that we would consider reducing. Next up is Dairy Fest, where I have 4 items. We've been having a good relationship with Mackey for a long time, and they've been taking on a greater role, which we appreciate. Looking at the 2022 expenditures for Dairy Fest at the city level, I noted that they were budgeted higher than they were actual, in some cases by a fair amount. So you see 4 cuts there in terms of staff time and supplies in the amount roughly totaling about $4,000. And then UWSP Marshfield campus, I did speak with or interact by email with Michelle and Brian from the university, proposing a cut of roughly $2,200. And that is due to the fact it's about 4% of their allotment of, roughly $55,000. And again, those monies are used by UWSP for building and facility maintenance on the grounds. So any takeaway there could have an impact on that function. Next up is development services. This is all staff related. We've been struggling. We have no people in the specific planning portion right now of development services. And we've been having a hard time. We've actually been trying for quite a while to refill the associate planner and development services director position. The city planner position is a little bit more recent in terms of being vacant. But our proposal would be to go through 2023 without refilling the associate planner position. And then for the other two positions, the development services director and the city planner, we don't expect to get them hired and on board right away in 2023. So the estimate would be we could go January and February without having those two positions in place, saving money there as well. There will be an offset to that in the sense that we do have to pay a consultant. We have a good arrangement right now with SCH, and Bryce Hembrook, the former city planner, is actually performing those services for the city, which is wonderful because Bryce is very familiar with our development services operation after 4 years working for the city. And so that's been a great arrangement for us. But we figure if we're not going to have a city planner and a development services director, and quite frankly, an associate planner, through February potentially of 2023, we would have to extend our agreement with SCH, and it's about $5,000 a month. So I put in that we would reduce our benefit from the other savings by $10,000 because we'll have to pay that consulting firm. That's all I have at this point. I would call up Jennifer Selensky, the finance director, to cover the next grouping of potential cuts.
Okay, so within the finance department, we are looking at essentially cutting training, which would be in an attempt to maintain CPA licenses for 2 staff members, and then reducing it to just an amount for payroll. Their American Association of Payroll certification. Also, we're looking at trying to reduce overtime, which has not been achievable in the past, but it is something that we will strive to do. Additionally, we can save a little bit of money in terms of audit services that can and should be performed in-house that we have previously asked the outside auditors to prepare on our behalf. That would be worth a couple of $1,000s. Going down the list, we had inadvertently left out the administration charge for wastewater and EMS for the admin allocation. We didn't take it out of the budget for the admin department, so we've included that as a potential savings. As far as our insurance goes, those rates are going up a scotch, so we've included additional amounts for those. One item that was also overlooked was a PEP plan for represented employees. So we do need to include in the budget $12,800 for that plan. And the rest relates to insurance. And that's what we came up with in our department. Questions?
And again, that last grouping you went through are things that, not part of the budget cut process we've been going through the last week, but they're things that finance department identified as being corrections that were necessary. All right. Thanks, Jennifer. Next up, it comes back to me, and that's going to be for police and fire. I think some of you have seen the recent meetings that were held by the Police and Fire Commission, and we heard earlier 2 speakers from the commission speak to this issue. In an attempt to find $960,000 in order to satisfy the requested cuts, it would have been nearly impossible for us to do that without police and fire being part of the picture. I looked at the situation and I have decided that I'm recommending a $125,000 cut from the police department budget and $50,000 cut to the fire budget. I put down for protection. I guess it could be divvied up between prevention and protection. And again, this is not my assertion of particular things I've seen that are unwarranted or worthy of being cut. It's the fact that I was not given, and I respect what we're hearing from the commission side, but without any particular guidance as to what might be trimmable or reducible, if you will, I had to go ahead and make my best assessment of what was needed to bring into the picture in order to achieve the council's request. And that's what I came up with. Next up would be Dan Kinnick on some items related to Public Works. Actually, it'll be Public Works for a while. He'll be followed by Tom Turchi and Chris Holly.
Excuse me. First one is related to City Hall. Professional services, $525 for MBU safety training for facility staff, and this warrants probably a little explanation. City Hall budget is fairly small. One employee covers the cost of operating this building and maintenance contracts, as well as utilities and so forth. The MAU safety training, MAUW safety training was a program that was started back in 2018, initially with wastewater staff and street division staff. It allows us to have a dedicated safety professional that handles all of our training and record keeping and keeps us on task with those activities. And in 2021, we added additional staff, Parks Department, Engineering, DPW, and our facilities employee. So now we have 58 employees that participate in the safety program. It's not mandatory for the second half of folks that got involved in this, even though it's been very beneficial to have them in on it. So you'll see this being cut from several budgets, not because it hasn't been effective, but just because these are small budgets and we have to cut something. So you'll see the 525 cut out of the MEUW budget, as well as Public Works Administration, 2 lines down. That's for my participation in the program. Now, I spend most of my time at a chair behind a desk, so I don't necessarily need the safety training, but it was beneficial for me to be part of the program to see what our staff is going through and be aware of the kinds of training that we're getting. So I was participating, but I'm suggesting that that be dropped for me. The consequences are that we still have this contract with MEUW through 2023. Either that bumps the cost for the remaining employees in the program, or we renegotiate that contract with the MEUW. I did speak with them this morning, and they're willing to work with us, whatever decisions are made. Obviously, cutting safety programs is not a good idea, but it's on the list. And then under Public Works Administration, my travel budget would be cut by $1,000. Typically, I've gone to 3 conferences in a year. This would reduce it to number 1. The downside is my position requires a professional engineering registration, which requires continuing education requirements. Those are typically achieved at these conferences. That have to figure out a different way to get those continuing education credits. There's a few other things, but I'll let Tom and Chris jump in here first, and then I'll.
So the engineering division budget, we removed the, engineering intern and GIS interns. This will reduce our staff and survey availabilities during the summer. We'll have to do some of our typical staffing and survey work with full-time staff, which will reduce some of the response times for ditching and other survey requests. Again, Dan talked about the safety training. We are eliminating all safety training for our staff. May have an increase in possible workman's comp claims, but it's not required for my division, so that was $3,500. And then travel for my staff and myself reduced by $2,600. So, any questions?
Thanks, Chris.
On the street division side, I'll highlight some of the stuff that we have here, reduction in or elimination in pretty much all travel staff and department head. I did leave a little bit of money in for some of our new employees that go to Snowplow Rodeo. That's very beneficial to those guys. We do anticipate a retirement this summer. Typically, it takes anywhere between 60 and 90 days to get that position refilled. So we put a reduction in employee wages and benefits of $20,000. We would get a hold of our contractor and try and reduce our overall mowing contract down by 15%. And you'll see this with the Park and Recs. That's where we got the idea. Basically only mowing one time of week after August 15th. A $10,000 reduction in our cold weather additive. It's called AMP. We add additive into our salt brine mixture for when the temperature is below 15 degrees. That helps lower the working temperature of the salt in the cold weather. We did fill up, or we will be filling up with our 3,000 gallons sometime this month. And we're hoping that that will be enough for the 2022-2023 snow season. Every year we purchase salt. We go into contract about March. We have to get that order out, and then we order some in reserve. We can order so many percent in reserve. Suggestion is hope for a good winter, and we would not purchase our reserve. We don't have to. That reserve is 500 ton of salt at a savings of $45,000 and just about $46,000. We eliminate the contracted hot epoxy painting for about $25,000. And the last one is waste management that we're under contract with right now. We signed that contract back in 2017 for 10 years. It was a very favorable contract to us. There's a pay raise every year, a 2% pay raise. We did talk to Chad, our area representative this morning, Dan and I did, and we asked, would it be able to eliminate a service of brush and branch collection and curbside yard waste? They are contracted to provide that service 5 times a year. And if we did that, we would be looking at a savings of approximately $51,000 there. Now, cutting services like this wasn't taken lightly by myself and Dan and others. We would be looking at the community to step up and help out, those that utilize the service, such as United Way 211. They just recently did a Make a Difference Day, I think it was called. So we'd be talking with them to see if they can help out. Leadership Marshfield projects. There's the Aging and Disability Resource Center that could help out the people that, have this service but don't have a trailer. Youth groups for community service would be a good idea. Your friends and neighbors, and then contractors would be able to step up and help out these people that we would eliminate that service for them. So that's all I have for you tonight.
Thanks, Chris. Next up, Dan's going to come back and cover a handful of other areas.
A few other odds and ends that fall under public works. Our street lighting has been talked about. In addition to what we pay for the street lights themselves, we've always included a token amount for installation of new street lights. That would take that out for $2,500. On our parking facilities, suggesting that the parking lot lights be included in our in our street light charges. That's $5,500. If we would add that to the street light charges that have been talked about, it'd be about a 2% additional fee. So going from $2 per month per residence to $2.03 per month per resident. If we were to lump that with the street lighting. The next 2 items are airport. I just looked for 4% reduction in airport items under the maintenance and repair and operating supplies. We just reduce their ability to make those repairs as needed. And then the last one is industrial park operations. This funds our industrial park mowing, signage, routine maintenance of other items. And we always have an item in there for of $2,000 in professional services for registered land surveyor. If we were going to split off a parcel for a land sale, doesn't get used every year. I would eliminate that for next year. If we need to do a land split and hire a surveyor, we'd have to come up with another way to fund it, but I would take it out initially. I think that's all the public works items.
Thanks, Dan. Justin, with all things related to Parks and Recreation.
Okay, we're going to start with the cemetery. We're going to eliminate weekend burials. We don't get a ton of them, but we do get some. Those 3 items are listed at the bottom of that page. Going to the next page would be elimination of an employee's cell phone at the cemetery. We have a generator at Oak Avenue. We would eliminate the contract for servicing that generator. Window cleaning at the 2nd Street Community Center, we'll cut that in half and clean every other month instead of every month. We would reduce our first aid supplies at the Second Street Community Center by 50%. Touched on earlier is the MEW training. We would eliminate all of our MEW training for our staff. It's all lumped into the parks operations, so that'd be $6,400 removed from our MEW training. The Plenzo Plaza Fountain, we would reduce the operation hours by 20%. So right now it goes from 10 to 8. We would reduce that to 11 to 7. Chris mentioned it earlier about mowing. We're going to do an every other week mowing operation after August 15th. Some of our athletic fields will have to continuously mow because they need to have that, obviously, for soccer playable conditions. Sorry, Natasha, we got the Upper Pond and the Benedict Pond portable toilets. Those are not as used as much, and Benedict is new for this budget, so those would be eliminated. We do pond treatments at Weber Park. We'd eliminate the pond treatments there. We would eliminate my cell phone as well as Amanda's cell phone for public administration. We do have a service called Constant Contact that helps with marketing and promoting of our programs and activities. We'd eliminate that. Ice skating, we would reduce the hours of operation of the warming house at Pickle Pond to just Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Jumping down to the zoo, we would reduce the winter zoo hours on Saturday and Sunday by 3 hours. At the zoo, we'd do every other week rotation for mowing again. We do a fall weed application at the zoo. We would eliminate that. We'd also eliminate our Wild Wednesday program. We'd find alternative ways to still do it, but we'd eliminate it from our budget. We'd reduce operation hours for Van de Hey Waters. Right now it's from 11 to 7. We'd go from 12 to 7. And a number of those items are listed below there. We would contract out our concessions operations. With the contracting out of our concessions operations, we do reduce the expense, but we do have an offsetting of loss of revenue. So there's an offset there, and it's noted down below. Fairgrounds, I would recommend freezing the 2023 payment to the 2022 rates. And then lastly would be special events and program coordinating Nikki's cell phone, eliminating her cell phone contract. And that is pretty much it for Parks and Rec.
Thank you, Justin. Jill, library. I realize that your board is not met, but I understand you've got a list.
Yeah, okay. Unless anyone has any questions, I'll skip over office supplies, publications, and travel. The first big one is really computer equipment. This was scheduled to be a partial payment for upgrades to our security camera system. We need both a new server and more exterior cameras. Would have come in very handy on Friday when a small child wandered away from her parents. We found her in the parking lot, but if we could have actually seen her on the cameras, it would have been settled much more quickly. The next one is a part-time staff position. We had a resignation last week of our marketing person who has accepted a full-time position elsewhere. And like Steve said, I haven't had a chance to discuss this with my board yet. We meet next Thursday and I'll be seeking their approval on this, but I'd seek to capture this position until we can find another way for funding that position. Obviously, marketing is very important to us. She accomplished it in 20 hours a week, which basically takes 30 hours a week, but we will put that on hold for now. The last one, temporary straight employees. We don't have normal temporary employees like other departments do. Our temporary employees are part-time staff members who work fewer than 20 hours per week. They are our substitutes. They fill in when we need staff elsewhere, if we're doing outside events, if we have 700 people in the library for Harry Potter Week. These are the people that we bring in, and that $12,835 represents 14 hours per week for the year.
Thank you, Jill. Excuse me. I have two more, and then I think we're going to stop. And there are cuts also that go on through the fourth page, but or changes, I should say. We'll go through those later. We need to as part of adopting the budget, but those are largely in other funds outside of the general fund. And I know that the emphasis tonight is on adjustments to the general fund that might be needed for the council's request. So the two I'm going to touch on here before we have questions and answers, if you will, are the HSA, the city's health savings account. Those of you who've been on the council for a while know we've had this account set up for a while, ever since we went to a high deductible health plan. And currently it's $600 for a single and $1,200 for a family that the city annually puts in to the employee's account. Obviously, the employee can make his or her own contributions to that plan annually. I'm going to strongly advocate, even though I put it out there as a potential cut, that the council not do this. And there's a few reasons for that. First of all, I think you know that we've been through the last 12 months or so as we've had people leave here. I know I've had a lot of questions from many of you on council about what's going on, why have employees chosen to resign and go to other employers or maybe retire early. And, part of it obviously relates to compensation and benefits. A fair amount does. I think the employees of our city are outstanding individuals, and I think they recognize that we are not able to provide the raises that maybe sometimes they could get in the private sector, or certainly that inflation would suggest at certain points like right now. And so this is one of the benefits we can provide now that our deductible for family health insurance is up to $6,000, which is commensurate with other employers, I get it. But it's something that is, if we're going to be an employer of choice, I think we have to do the little things that we can do to incentivize people to stay here and work for the city of Marshfield and to want to come here. And I think this is one of those benefits that I would really want to hang my hat on as something that makes a statement that we care about employees. We want to offset some of those medical expenses that they incur in a meaningful way. In checking with other communities around us, we found that, for example, Rapids and Wausau, we didn't check a whole lot, but they have a similar type of program where they put money into the employee's account. So I'm putting it out there, certainly to meet the $960,000, but I would strongly advocate leaving that as it is as an important benefit to our employees. Again, showing our interest in being that employer of choice that we want to be. The other one I'll note at the bottom is shared ride transfer. I think I've talked before about the fact that we have an increasing amount that we have to pay in a local share to make up the difference between the amount that we get from the fares and the state and federal grants. Those two combined make up 90%, sometimes more than 90% of the cost of the shared ride taxi service. The city ends up bearing the remainder, and that has grown over time as the total expenses of the taxi services have increased. We had estimated it to be around $92,000, and we're suggesting perhaps a slight cut to that, hopefully working with a provider, possibly looking at fare increases, although there's nothing that's been discussed at this point, and or reductions in expenses that would help us to minimize that local share. So with that in mind, I would say we stop at this point with the general fund issues that have been presented. Take any conversation or questions. I would turn it back over to the Finance, Budget, and Personnel Chair, Tom Witzel.
All right. As promised, we will have an opportunity now, council member by council member, to bring up any questions, comments, or concerns. At this point, I do want to remind the council that what we are currently still looking at is the budget as it was proposed multiple weeks ago. These changes have not occurred. So we're still looking at the initial budget. Any changes would require some type of action from the body. So we'll start with Mike on the end down there. Mr. Fire, did you have any questions or comments?
The only comment I have is on the share ride transfer reduction. I have to see how that works out. We have a problem with that anyway, I don't know if our provider is going to be able to absorb any of that. Another problem.
Anything else?
No.
Okay.
Not now.
Facial, you're up.
Thank you. I will maintain my position from our last meeting that I am opposed to cuts. I know that there are some of these things were minor office supplies and things like that are cuts that would normally occur. It would just be unspent funds from the budget throughout the year. I didn't hear anything presented tonight that I would be in favor of cutting. And I would be especially opposed to cutting anything. I think the current vernacular is defunding the police or other public safety measures. Thank you.
Ms. Tompkins.
Firstly, I'd just like to thank staff. All of you worked really hard to do this, and I'm sure it was not a fun process at all. Gosh, I'm still sort of processing this and trying to prioritize. I think everyone's done a really good job prioritizing. I don't know if that's necessarily my role. I think you have all said this is what we could handle. Yeah, so I'm still thinking. I don't have a definite statement at the moment.
Mr. Varsho.
Just a couple things. You mentioned the insurance. Do you get the renewals every year? Do we look outside to other insurance agencies or just reach out? Now, granted, I'm not advocating for where I work, obviously. I'm just wondering, when we get the renewals the other day, we had the medical renewals come in. Are those looked at every year, or are those just looked at every 3 years?
As members of the league does that on our behalf. They go out and search for the best policies that meet our needs, and then they give us a quote for those.
Okay, and that's both for medical and for property?
Not for the medical. That would be for the property, for workers' comp, for public office holder liability.
Okay. And is that something we have to do? Or can we go out and look at it ourselves?
We certainly could do it ourselves, but as being members of the league, it's a benefit that they provide for us.
Okay. Let's see here. For you can stay up there, Jennifer. I was just wondering, for your guys' overtime, you guys are hourly then?
We have certain staff that are hourly.
Hourly, and they get overtime when,
that typically happens during the year-end crunch when there are extra filings and payroll runs in order to get those out on time. That's typically where the overtime has occurred.
Okay. Dan, for the training you guys have, does that adversely affect anything else that would be, okay, so you guys don't go through the training, is that going to affect any of our liability insurance? You know, is it going to adversely affect us? So you cut that training out of the budget, yet the liability insurance goes up because you don't have that training.
I don't think it's a direct influence on the liability insurance until there's a claim against workman's comp. Then that would affect our mod rate and could affect future premium years. But initially, I mean, I'm not sure if we're looking at these as permanent cuts or one year cuts. I mean, if this is something we can bring back in 2024, then we're probably not hurt too badly. But if you're looking at all these cuts as permanent cuts, then it might be a different story.
Okay, thanks, Dan. That is all I had for now. Thank you.
Mr. Wagner.
Thank you, sir. I got a few things here. One is one that I was thinking about we have 3 positions in the planning department. We have the director, we have the associate planner, and then we have the zoning administrator. Mm-hmm. I was thinking that perhaps we could eliminate one of maybe the middle position and contract out on a much cheaper basis, on as needed basis for that. So I'm very strongly willing to support that. And I will remind you once again that there's a lot of freebies available to us through the Regional Planning Commission that can fill in that center slot.
I have talked to Dennis from North Central Wisconsin Regional Planning after you talked to me. And I mean, they can provide that. They're short-staffed right now too. They've been looking for a planner for some time unsuccessful as well, as are many communities.
Does it make you wish we were back in planning again?
Not really.
There's one. As far as finance goes, you're talking about basically reducing doing some of the reports and things yourself. Does that include the CAFR, and how much do we pay annually for the CAFR? That's a consolidated annual financial report.
It would not include that report at this time. We are thinking we would take over the Form C, which is the municipal financial report that we have to submit to the DUR. for whatever reason, that's been done outside of our four walls, but we believe we have the tools to now do that. In the quote, the preparation of the financial report and the Form C was bundled, I believe at $6,000. So we are estimating the cost of that Form C to be $2,000. While we are not prepared to take over the financial report, there are items that we can do to facilitate the auditor's preparation of those. That would mean taking over some of the preparations of the notes to the financial statement. And then we could be making some of the adjustments for the financial report that they are doing on our behalf. Our systems currently is not designed to actually complete that report. The decision was made to keep that outside at the auditors rather than implementing that module in our current financial software. So in order to do it completely in-house, we would have to purchase the module and then train up on that. So I thought it was a good first step to take over the preparation of the report and some of those notes that I'm confident that my staff can handle.
Thank you for that. Okay. One thing under, and I think this is under Public Works, just as a matter of curiosity, the MEUW, what does that stand for? I know it's some kind of safety training, but I'm not sure what the derivation of that is.
I honestly don't know the exact terminology. It's the company that they hired to do the safety training.
They hire? Who they?
It basically provides a safety training for Public Works, for street division, wastewater. They do work for the electric utility. I don't know their actual name. I just know them as MEUW.
Okay. And basically, just about everybody participates in this thing.
Yep.
Just about everybody that has anything to do with Public Works.
Well, this is just for my office. The 3,500 that you see in there is just for my office. So my staff would no longer receive safety training.
Okay. All right. Let's see. And I guess getting down into the streets, I guess I'm a little worried about, it says that let's see, do not purchase cold weather additive AMP for 2023, hoping have enough to last for the season. Hoping, that word worries me a lot. What do you base that on?
In the last 2 years, last year we didn't have to purchase it, and we're down to about 1,000 gallons right now. Our tank is 3,000 gallons, and we are in the process of topping that tank off, and we are pretty confident and hoping that will last the 2022-2023 season. And it's municipal electrical utility.
Municipal what?
A municipal electrical utility division for MEUW.
That's not done by our utility, is it?
No, it's not.
Good.
Contracted. And to comment on that, Alderman Wagner, I did not eliminate that from my division because we need that safety training for our guys. So that was one thing that I couldn't eliminate. It would just be impossible. We have to have that training for our staff. So the downside of it is Marshfield, the wastewater department and everybody in Park and Rec and engineering is part of that contract, and we're not sure how we would absorb the cost of all of that. So.
Okay, and I guess while you're up here, I'm not too terribly distressed about the elimination of picking up yard waste and that sort of thing, because it hasn't been exactly consistent, for lack of a better word. I mean, I 2 years in a row, 3 years in a row now, I've put the stuff out there, bagged nicely, covered containers a little bit, and I had it out in 2 weeks, or for 2 weeks, waiting for you guys to pick it up on the date that you said we were going to pick it up, and it didn't happen. And it's not you, it's the advance.
Yes.
And they ended up taking them out to the compost heap myself anyway. I don't think we're losing too much there, so I'm not too upset about that.
and I'm glad you brought that up. The one thing it's going to do, though, is it's going to open up, we had this conversation this morning, Dan brought this up. If we do an amendment to the contract, Dan asked the question, well, does that open up the contract? And like I said before, we got a very favorable contract. Ed was pretty confident that it wouldn't, but it was discussed. Just the 2% increase since 2017 is just kind of unheard of in the industry. There's that possibility. They did bring up the fact that they, you know, if we eliminated this out of their contract, would we be willing to get rid of the bulk waste pickup too? So that's out there.
Have you ever solved that issue of the landlords dumping furniture out on the, have you ever, I mean, that.
Well, it's part of bulk pickup, but they won't pick up.
Yeah, that's what brought it to mind.
Yeah.
But there's some really, really nice stuff there, right, on the, that really makes the community look really good with mattresses stashed along the curb. It's up on Peach, in case we're wondering.
Okay.
Okay, that's all I have on that for a minute. I got one more thing. I'm a little bit uneasy about reducing the benefits of the payment into the health savings account. And I'll tell you why, because it's when we're interviewing people, when we're recruiting people, we tell them, oh, we've got this great thing. We've got a high deductible insurance program, but guess what? We're going to cover some of your payments for you. And then we hire them. And I'm thinking it's sort of a mandatory, it's sort of a condition of employment. And I'm a little worried about that, you know, when we promise it to them and then don't deliver it. So I'm a little worried about that. And if I recall, I think finance is the one that tracked down the numbers for me. I think it's about 160,000 a year.
Total for all funds, and for the general fund, about 135. Yep.
So I would, I could see a reduction of some, but not necessarily the elimination of it. So I'd like to, I'd just like to voice my concern about that. And for the moment, that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. Does the mayor have any comments or questions?
I do not at this time. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Fisher?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A lot of my questions were already asked by Mr. Marshall and Mr. Wagner, so they stole my thunder. But I do want to make a few comments. First of all, I do want to say thank you to all the staff and department heads. I know this was not easy. I cannot imagine how painful it is for you to propose these cuts. So I do want to sincerely thank you for bringing this forward, even through that painful experience. As I said at the last meeting last week, I don't think anybody enjoys this. I know I am not enjoying it, but we are in a place where we are running out of money because we are continuing to borrow money from our reserves, and we can't keep doing business like this. And I just want to remind the public, if they're watching this meeting, that if the lawsuit with the Marshfield Clinic Health System goes forward and they win in court, we will probably have to be back here doing this very thing. So I thank you for your prayer, Stephen, and please continue to pray, because that lawsuit could horribly impact the citizens, impact the operations of our city. Thank you.
Mrs. Spiros?
Thank you. I'm just going to echo a couple things that people have already said. Again, I know this was a lot of work to be done by all the department heads in a week, and we do appreciate your efforts. I do appreciate your efforts. There's just a couple of things that I wanted to talk about. I think that Mr. Wagner hit on this with the associate planner. From what I'm understanding, you're kind of putting a number in here to cover the first couple of months of the year of him not being hired, or somebody not being hired into that position. I would prefer to see this position cut for the remainder of the year, all of 2023, and reconsider looking at this in 2024. And that should free up some other funds that can go back. I think the safety training is an important thing to go back into the budget, as well as the continuing education that's needed to maintain your licenses, your certificates, or whatever it is that you have. And I think if we cut that position the whole entire year, you might be able to get those funds back for some of those things that I think are really important. This was not my preferred way to look through this list because it's a lot to process in, the first 30 minutes of a meeting and then to give you a decision. I kind of wish that we would have had this list a few hours ago so that we could focus and concentrate a little bit better. So with that being said, I'm not 100% sure that we can decide this tonight because I can't imagine I'm the only one looking at this how many pages spreadsheet and trying to calculate it while we're all online. The cut to the police budget, I know that we can only suggest an amount, but I did want to go on and say what I thought that could be used towards. Our assistant police chief is retiring soon, and I would advocate to leave that position empty, at least for the time being. And I am okay with everything else on the list at this point, at least. Again, it's very difficult to read it and it's very difficult to concentrate on it. But at this point, I'll just defer to the next person in line.
Mr. Barr, do you have a quick question?
Yeah, thank you. I just want to respond quickly to 2 points from Councilmember Spiros. Thank you. First of all, the associate planner, we are proposing in these cuts that position not be refilled for the entirety of 2023. The ones we're suggesting we would save 2 months by not refilling in January and February would be the Development Services Director and the City Planner. And that's largely because of the recruitment struggles we're having right now. We don't see that coming to fruition before that time anyway. But the Associate Planner is off for the year of 2023. And we are having conversations that probably bubble up to different levels here soon about the structure of that department and where that goes ultimately. I know we have the org chart meeting coming up fairly soon. The other thing is I do apologize that this was not in your hands a little bit earlier. The 5 work days was a short period of time. We had a staff meeting yesterday afternoon to try and pull all this together into a package that we could bring to you. And then I know Jordan was working on trying to make the numbers work today. And I wish we'd gotten it out a little bit earlier. So we do apologize, but it's been kind of a tight time frame project overall.
So in response, if I may.
Yes.
Just forget everything I said about the associated planner, leaving it out all year. I'm sorry, I wasn't paying close enough attention to that. So with that being said, I would like to see, however, the safety training put back into the budget and the training for necessary renewals of licensures or whatever you listed there. And I realize that that's not going to make us to the 4%, but I do think that those 2 things are important for the stated reasons. If something were to occur, we would be looking at some problems with workers' comp. There could be issues with OSHA. There could be all kinds of different things related to that. And it's always nice if you have the training to back you up in those situations. But I will reiterate, I am fine with the rest of the cuts. It's a sad day, but I'm okay with that.
Mr. O'Reilly.
Thank you. I also will echo what I've heard a lot tonight. This is not a place I want to be. It's not the decision I want to make. It's unfortunate. I do thank everyone for establishing this list and giving us something to chew on. I guess I'm absorbing a lot of it yet. Like has been mentioned, it's not easy to consume all this in the short amount of time we've had to look. And same with you guys, putting this list together in the short time is also difficult. One item I will mention that I brought up before, there is some savings by transferring our cost for the school liaison officers to the district where it belongs. This is done throughout the state in numerous places, from 50% of their budget to 75 of the budget for these officers. This has been mentioned in this council numerous times. I've heard a lot of discussion about it, and I never see any action with it. And to be honest, I'm fed up with it. They need to be paying their portion of it. They should not be sitting on the city's budget 100%. So at that point, I will leave that one alone and thank everybody for what they've done.
Thank you. Mr. Hendler?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that. My personal position hasn't changed since the last meeting. I am very disturbed that the Fire and Police Commission are taking a hit. I know times are difficult, and I know how we got here. And I will not change my mind on that. I think fire and police protection is the core of our society that keeps us together. Now, whether people believe that or not, I do. Number two, I'm very disturbed about the elimination of the HSA, which I agree with Mr. Wagner and with Mr. Barr. I think this is not good. We need to really rethink that for our employees. And then finally, I think there are different sources of money that I've never heard mentioned, and I'm not going to mention them tonight because it's going to take me a while to absorb what has been presented. And I thank the staff for doing an excellent job with this, and I know it was painful. And I've been through this before with the UW. However, I would like to wait until November 5th for the next November 5th. Announce another meeting on November 10th. Because I'm going to have to sit back and take a look at this. This is a lot of information to put together and think of. Thank you.
Okay, and then I just wanted to make a couple of quick comments. First of all, I was a tad bit offended by one of my colleagues who used the phrase defunding the police, because I find that that has a whole lot of negative political connotation, and I don't believe that that is the desire of anybody on this council. I believe we're simply looking at a budget and trying to figure out how to balance it. So I'm offended by that phrase. A few things to jump out at me. The concession stand outsourcing seems like it's a win-win. It doesn't net us a lot of benefit, but it also potentially saves us the hassle of having to try to hire those people and keeping those employees happy and managing all that. I think if that can be outsourced, that'd be great. I agree with the idea of maybe the assistant chief position stays empty for a while. The associate planner position stays empty for a while. I think what this did, and I do thank the staff, as everyone else has, for the incredible amount of work and the long hours that went into putting this together. What this shows me is that there's not much fat. And there's really, other than a couple of things that I just mentioned, not much that I really see that I could embrace as being things to cut. I will piggyback off what Mr. O'Reilly said. I don't know if resource officers, crossing guards, those types of things that we're paying 100% for the school district is something that can be worked through. I'm frustrated because we sit here as a common council with a limited budget, with laws that prevent us from raising taxes, with expenditure restraint programs that keep us from being able to spend money. The school district passes referendums every couple of years because, hey, they can. They're unwilling to pay for crossing guards. They're unwilling to pay for resource officers. They're unwilling to pay for meetings to be filmed and put out for the public. We sat here a few months ago debating about what meetings to film. That is their responsibility. And we have been tasked with filming their meetings, putting it on the taxpayers' back. Granted, it's not a tremendous amount, but it's yet another thing that the school district shirks and drops on this common council to do. What I really hoped to see here was a silver bullet that we could say, oh, if we just eliminate this, then we can fully fund our police and fire and an ambulance and get those 3 firefighters back. I don't see that silver bullet here. I'm still trying to figure out how do we do this, because I am really concerned with the safety and with the services that those departments provide. Mr. Barg has some comments.
Thank you very much. I just want to touch briefly on the issue that you raised and that Councilmember O'Reilly raised regarding the school district. Just to add to a memo that I wrote from LAX Airport in Los Angeles, and I'm not sure if it was read at the meeting but I think you may have seen it. I have spoken with Ryan Christensen, the superintendent. He has made it clear that he's open to meeting to talk about a contribution toward the liaison officers and the crossing guards. I suggested to him that it would, should come after this is over, because he's going to want to look at, talking to his board and it'd probably be more than one conversation. But there is definitely an openness to consider that on his part. He's aware of the fact that there are other districts that make such payment. This, again, would be subject to the concerns raised by the police chief about making sure that we have control of an officer that's in the school. So look for that to continue and come up after this budget process, and you'll hear more. Definitely you're exploring that. What I wanted to say briefly before you consider the ultimate changes you might make to the 2023 recommended budget. First of all, I just want to say what some of you have said. Thank you to staff. When I came back from Los Angeles, and the first thing I did basically was went to a meeting with the people in this room back last Wednesday, I was like, oh my gosh, $960,000. I was kind of overwhelmed. This group of people is an incredible array of professionals. We sat down, we talked, as we always do whenever we have any problem or concern. I know I say this when the budget kickoff happens, but I cannot say enough about the people that I'm looking at right now and their ability to dig in, roll up their sleeves, and have conversations. And they really went to bat in this one. They got deep down in. You saw evidence of that with cuts everywhere from big to $200. I just want to say one more thing. I did ask them in preparing for this not to overplay the impact of the budget cuts, but not to underplay them. So I think when you look at some of the things we brought up, some of them, again, as I said before, have lesser impact, but I don't want to downplay the impact that some of them would have in terms of services to the public. We talk about brush and yard waste pickup, painting crosswalks, hours at Vanderhee Waters, delayed hirings, and how that might impact city operations, growth and development of our employees, whether it be travel and training, and further education. These are all things that can be cut, but they all certainly go into how we perform our services here. So we totally respect whatever decisions you come to. It's a challenging place for the council to be looking at the financial issues we face. I just wanted to thank these folks and let you know that we tried very hard to do the best job we could to prepare for this meeting.
Do we want to cover those final items that are at the bottom of this document, since it sounds as though we're not going to be taking a whole lot of action on the changes this week, or to this meeting, I mean?
Let's talk about that. If I could ask Jessica to come up again. I think she talked about this at the last meeting, but we are kind of running up a pretty good time crunch as far as bringing a budget to public hearing.
Correct. So with the 15-day publication notice for a public hearing on your budget and newspaper deadlines, should you not take action tonight, you will be forced to have a meeting on Thursday to adopt the budget as you're going to present it in the public hearing. And then your public hearing will be on Wednesday, November 30th. So any action not taken tonight, you will meet Thursday and you will meet Wednesday, November 30th. There are no options on those days. Those are your dates.
With that in mind, I sort of thought maybe we would see how much you could deal with. Well, yeah, we thought, see how much you wanted to deal with the items that have been put out there for the general fund. The general fund is really the biggest place where the action is at in terms of what you normally talk about in these meetings. But yeah, we definitely have to have Jennifer Selensky, read through the other items, bring them into the record, even if they're the internal service fund, the enterprise funds, the capital projects funds, as things that we want to see changed to reflect the corrections that have been found for the budget. So whatever order you want to take those in. And then I think Jennifer also has something she wants to talk about that we did last year when Ron Allman was the finance director, about having a contingency and how that might play into our benefit for future expenditure restraint funding. So I just leave it to you how you want to proceed.
Jennifer, if you want to present, please.
Okay, the first item I will start off with does impact the general fund. It is the PEP expense that for the program that we had for grandfathered employees. So we are anticipating 2 retirements. Initially, we did not include the first one in the budget because we thought the retirement was occurring in 2022 and the payout would occur in 2022, but that is not the case. And then the second item was excluded because there was an error in the spreadsheet from 2013 when this program started. And we didn't think an employee was eligible, but who actually is. Now,
Jennifer, can I jump in for a second?
Of course.
Just to note that the payment being made to the employees who are retiring, it's a benefit they're entitled to is based upon employment conditions of the past. Monies have been set aside. It's not coming out of nowhere.
Right. So we have set aside money specifically for this purpose in our financial statements in our committed fund balance reserve. If you will recall, we have different classifications of that fund balance. We have non-spendable, which is essentially the amount that we are funding TID 5-7 for their shortfalls from years past that is being repaid by property taxes. We have committed, which these 2 payouts would be a part of that. We set it aside anticipating a future payout. And then we have our unassigned. So although this is an increase in expense in general fund, we already have a funding source for it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Does everybody, any questions on that? And then very quickly then, the offset for up above the $11,475 for the shared ride transfer reduction is a reduction in expense in the general fund. It is also a reduction, a corresponding reduction in revenue in the special revenue fund for taxi. The issues regarding Fund 401 were for a project where we had anticipated the revenue, but we did not include the expense. So that's just right sizing that budget. In 410, it is the same, sort of the same situation where we're just cleaning up items that have been approved in the CIP, matching the revenue and the expenditures. And we have some insurance increases in our other funds for wastewater, internal service, and EMS. Also within the EMS fund, we are taking out the interest expense since we will be levying for that. So that'll be a reduction of expense in their fund. And then in the 701 internal service fund, we made some adjustments for the diesel program. We hadn't right-sized anticipated diesel revenue with costs. So those are changes that are just making corrections for things we didn't know at the time your books were published.
Okay, Jennifer, while you're there, could I ask you to touch on what I started on a minute ago? Last year at this time, we did establish a contingency and funded it to a level that would help us to qualify for future years' expenditure restraint. You want to maybe touch on that and why it might be valuable to us to look at that again?
So for 2023, we do have a rather unusual expenditure restraint allowance of 8%. In past, this typically correlates to CPI. So this year we had a very low net new construction, but CPI is so high that the state has allowed our expenditure in our budgets to grow by this amount. As we are facing cuts, that whatever we put in the budget becomes our baseline for next year. So if we don't increase it and we don't take advantage of the 8% that they are granting us this year, next year we decide these cuts weren't permanent, we're bringing them back in. We don't have that room to actually budget them without exiting the program. So as a final adjustment, we are allowed since we don't know where our cuts are, I'll go with the approach of if we were to max out and take advantage strategically of what we are allowed, we would enter a total budget amount of $25,290,000. So whatever the difference is between what we plug in for the various accounts and this amount would be recorded in our contingency account. That is not to say that it is free game for spending. Anything taken out of that account, should it be deemed necessary, would require a budget resolution passed by the body. So it's there strategically to take advantage of future years if we feel we are able to increase that budget, we can do so without exiting that program, which is very valuable to the city. In 2023, we will be receiving $487,000. So planning for future years, if we don't give ourselves this flexibility, there could come a time when we could have to increase expenditures and lose out on that $487,000.
And again, the funding source would be fund balance applied, but if you look at how we handled the $400,000 this year, we've spent virtually none of that.
I think there was one budget item for about $25,000 that was approved to be spent, and that did require your approval.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments from the body? Yes, Mr. Wagner.
Thank you. Would it be appropriate to put a motion on the floor for consideration of increasing that expenditure for the purpose of eligibility for the expenditure of restraint program?
If you would word it as such, so as a not to exceed that maximum amount, because as of today, we don't know if it's going to be $1 million or $1.4 million that we would be able to have in our flexible pocket.
Would you repeat once again what that amount we should not exceed would be?
$25,290,000.
Okay, that's what I've got. Okay, so can we then make a motion to increase the budget to $25,290,000 for the purposes of expenditure restraint? I will make that a motion.
Okay, so we have a motion to increase the budget to $25,290,000 using money, you're putting money into contingency based on where the rest of the budget falls in place to provide for the expenditure restraint program in future years.
Correct.
I have that motion. I have a second from Mrs. Tompkins. We're getting the notes written down, so patience, please.
Do we want
it? Yes.
For the total budget amount not to exceed
$25,290,000.
Correct.
Are you ready? All right, we'll take roll call vote.
Fire? Facial?
Yes.
Tompkins? Marshall?
Yes.
Wagner?
Yes.
Witzel?
Yes.
Fisher?
Yes.
Spiros?
Yes.
O'Reilly?
Yes.
Emler?
Yes.
That motion carries unanimously. All right, we've had a lot of information presented to us, a lot of discussion. Are there other questions, comments, or actions that anybody on the council would like to take at this time before we discuss a potential another meeting?
I don't know if you want to.
Chief?
Your turn.
Thank you. We got kind of lumped in there with the $50,000 cut. I'd feel remiss if I didn't come up here and tell you what that's going to mean. I have looked through the budget. I can feel we can probably cut $14,500 without reduction to services. Any more than that, we're starting to look at things like technical rescue, hazardous materials response, other services we provide. It's not meant as an ultimatum or anything like that. Please don't take it that way. It's just, we've dug through the budget and that's where we're at right now. I just want you guys to be informed that that's where we're reduced to right now. I also want to make mention that, you know, and Alderman Witzel, you said it perfectly, that we're losing 3 firefighters. I know those firefighters came out of the EMS enterprise budget, so I just want to make sure you guys all understand that we are all cross-trained, so we didn't just lose 3 paramedics, we lost 3 firefighters, 3 public educators, 3 inspectors, all the different hats we wear, which has put a strain on these folks out here. So I just want everybody to understand that, especially with the $50,000 flat amount. Like I said, I think we can get about 14,500, but anything more than that, we're looking at service cuts. Just information. I'll take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for the chief?
I will add that you know, Pete worked with me throughout the process before the recommended budget was submitted to make quite a few cuts. So it wasn't like cuts weren't made prior to the council seeing the budget the first time.
All right, it appears we have no other discussion. Mayor, did you have comments to make?
Yes, I have just one comment. I would like to give a huge thank you to all the people who worked on this budget. Being as I know it was not easy for any of us in this room and outside this room and in the general public. It took a lot of time over the last week. I have a very strong feeling for some of these areas that can be cut by somewhat. I can't imagine we're going to come to an $960,000 cut in even 10 meetings. If we can get to some resolve and make some of this happen without cutting safety, which is the primary aspect of why we live in the city. As I talk to the older folks, that is why they moved back to Marshfield, because they have the city, the protection from the Police and Fire Commission. I'm not saying maybe they can't cut some of theirs. As Pete just mentioned, 14,000. Well, that's not 50, but if we start somewhere, maybe we can find some more as a community. So that is my feeling for this evening. And Tom, thank you for calling on me. Last week I was not called on, so I wasn't sure if I could talk again, but I guess I can. So thank you all, and you know I can talk. But anyway, I just want to, again, say thank you, and yes, this is hard. This is nothing that not any of us wanted to do, but here we are.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Wagner.
One thing, in the round, going around Robin, around the room, one of the things I heard was that we have an unresolved issue, and that is with the school resource officers. I would like, I don't know if I need to put a motion on the floor or to get a commitment from Mr. Barg that that we should initiate formal discussions with the school board with the eye on shared cost of those resource officers, and that we should resolve something by January 1st of 2023.
Are you making that motion?
I'll make it a motion.
So what is your exact motion?
That the administration proceed with discussions with the school board for shared revenue sharing or cost sharing with the school board for the school resource officers.
And crossing guards?
Thank you.
And filming? We have a second down there, Mr. O'Reilly. Did you say yes to filming? Yes, you did. Mr. O'Reilly. All right, roll call vote, please.
Fire? Paschal?
Nay.
Tompkins?
This is for shared revenue?
Shared cost.
Shared cost.
Marshall?
Yes.
Wagner?
Yes.
Witzel?
Yes.
Fisher?
Yes.
Spiros?
Yes.
O'Reilly?
Yes.
Hendler?
Yeah. That passes, I believe, 8-2?
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions, comments, discussion? Yes, Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Witzel, one more thing I need to say is the reason I voted yes to tape the school board meetings, because I feel that's important for the public to see. The $75 cost, I was hoping maybe the school could step up and have some of their National Honor Society kids that need some extra work to do the filming, but that has not come to fruition. So the idea started with, yes, we do need to tape these. Without that, we'd be right where we were again. And maybe the school board would not be so amenable to coming to meetings and doing things. So that is the reason why I voted yes on that. Okay, I just want to make that very clear, not because of the money, but because of the transparency, because that's important for the school.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? We'll move on to letter G then, which is to set date and time. And it says here to set date and time for public hearing of Monday, the 28th, or announce the date and time of the 5th budget meeting, Thursday, the 10th. I guess at this point, we will be doing a budget meeting on Thursday, the 10th. And I don't know if we can also then just identify, as was identified from the clerk's office, that we will have to have the public hearing then on Wednesday, the 30th, as a part of all this. I guess it's been whispered in my ear, we have to realize as a council that we don't leave here Thursday until the budget's passed. So if that takes us until midnight, I guess we're going to be here a while. So this time it's identified at being at 5:30 start time for Thursday, November 10th. A comment?
Yeah, if I can just chime in for a minute. Apologize for the tight time frame. Obviously, you didn't see this sheet until tonight. But if you have any questions, anything you want to bring up, please do it with staff in the next, couple of days before Thursday night at 5:30 to get those addressed, to have a better understanding if you need of the potential cuts, so that we can do business on Thursday night. Again, I apologize, it's a tight time frame, but as Jessica's already said, we need to get it done that night and get something published to act on.
Mrs. Spiros?
I do have to mention that the UW Commission has a meeting that evening, and that 2 or 3 of us are on that commission. I believe that meeting starts at 5 or 6. Ooh. Mike, do you know, aren't you on it?
He says it starts at 5.
Actually, it starts at 4:30 this week for some reason, because I talked to Michelle. I have no idea why it's 4:30, but if you look at your note, I believe it says 4:30 and it goes till 6 o'clock.
So do we want to begin the meeting here at 6:30 then?
Sure.
Mr. Fire?
I have a conflict with that day because I have a veteran, this is Veterans Week, and Thursday night is our Veterans Day because Veterans Day falls on Friday, so we moved it back one day to have the banquet and all the presentations, and it starts at 5, and I don't know what, I could come after we get done, but I'm not going to make that 5 o'clock. Whatever time you start that meeting, I'm involved with this whole process of running the meeting and serving the food also, so that could be a problem. I have an allegiance to the veteran. I always have, and I always will, so I don't think I'll be there until later.
Okay. Mrs. Tompkins?
Is it possible to do this tomorrow?
I won't be here.
Well, and you have to have a 24-hour notice requirement to the public unless it's an emergency. And I think this is getting closer, but I don't think we're there yet. So I think it would have to be sometime on Thursday the 10th.
Mr. Paschal?
Thank you. As you can tell, I'm traveling, and I'm not sure where I'll be at 5 o'clock on Thursday, but if I'm someplace that has a wireless connection, I will attempt to join you, but I can't guarantee it.
Okay, we're actually, I believe, looking at 6:30 start time. We want to push it back to 7? Do we need to take action on this to decide the exact time? Or can we just say 7 o'clock on Thursday?
Yeah, we'll have to publish this, tomorrow morning to get it out.
7 o'clock on Thursday gives us the best opportunity for Mr. Fire to finish up with what he's got going on and not be so late, for the commission to be done with their meeting, for Mr. Paschal to find a hotspot. All right, any other comments? All right, so we will meet Thursday at 7 PM here, and we will be here until we're done. Next item on the agenda is adjournment. Do I have a motion? Motion by Mr. Wagner, seconded by Mr. O'Reilly. All those in favor? Opposed? We're adjourned.